Hi, thanks for coming to our webinar case study about insights acceleration. First of all, I'd like to thank our clients at AT&T for being willing and open about discussing the way we are partnering with them to co-create this process. We continue to fine-tune the process, questioning all the things you might want to question in terms of reducing time and the impact of insights, and of course the time needed to deliver the insights. So, everyone has a cell phone, or two, or even three. Most consumers subscribe to pay TV service or video on demand streaming service, some kind of TV service. That means that for AT&T, general demand for the products is the easy part. Creating demand for their brand over their competitors is what they focus on every day. And they're in a hyper-competitive industry that is constantly changing offers and messages very fast. As a result, two of the most important questions that AT&T leadership asks all the time are, what's our compelling hero message? And how fast can we get that message into market? The whole point of our intense focus on insights acceleration is to make insights available to decision makers at AT&T sooner so they can execute strategy in this very fast-moving competitive environment. So 3 years ago, we started this journey with AT&T. We began our partnership to try to find shorter timelines. At that time in the industry, it would typically take including us, it would take 6 weeks to conduct a message or a concept test. That is the time from when a client writes an RFP to the delivery of the final report. Although our case study may make it look like this journey to revolutionize research at AT&T was a strategic plan, it wasn't. We didn't start with a grand plan. In fact, we still don't have a grand plan. It started with a simple, urgent request. AT&T needed to test new messages and needed an answer in 3 weeks instead of 6 weeks in order to give their creative team at BBDO enough time to create the ads. Question to us. Can you do it? Our answer was yes, we can do it. We used the brute force method. We didn't really reduce the amount of time, we just added more people to get it done. But we knew that that wouldn't be the last time the issue came up. So, as a combined AT&T and Skim team, we decided to see what we could do to reduce the time needed while keeping the high level of insights. Well, what does it take to reduce the time to deliver great insights? First of all, it takes a commitment and willingness from both partners to question the status quo and to be willing to make mistakes and change thinking along the process. I'll discuss the steps, challenges, process changes you want to make in order to deliver insights faster, and I'll also show some of the templates we're using with AT&T to achieve fast turnaround, and then I'll wrap it up with 6 key takeaways. So how we did it? Well, we really looked at 4 themes for improvement. The first theme was deconstruct. We looked at the steps in the current process to understand what drives the timelines. Then we talked about where we could get some quick wins, low-hanging fruit, if you will. Then we looked at what could we standardize, what could we make templates for, or even best of all, take out of the process altogether. And fourth, we looked at things that would take longer and perhaps multiple iterations to change. Part of this is the ongoing discussion about what new innovations you could have and processes we could try. So those kinds of things that are not ending. Let's look at first at deconstructing the processes. So we looked at all of the stuff that occurs at a client side or on the agency side to take a lot of time, and friction points where things can get hung up along the process. On the AT&T side, big time consumers including writing the RFP, reviewing proposal submissions from various agencies, getting cost approval, getting internal approval of the messages to be tested, for instance, or whatever you were testing, reviewing the questionnaire, testing the program survey, reviewing the draft report, turning the report into deliverables for internal clients, converting Skim slides to AT&T slides, and finally, the time spent with internal clients to read out the results. I'm sure that any client-side people in the audience can relate to many of these time consumers and friction points and experience them regularly. On our side, big skim time consumers included proposal writing, of course, the back and forth with the client on the specs, getting sample costs, questionnaire writing, creating and programming the max diff and conjoint exercises, which we use almost all the time, QCing, field work, conducting the analysis, building a simulator, we almost always have a simulator, creating and populating the draft report, QCing again, revising and completing the final report. Yes, there's a lot of places where there's potential for delays or just a lot of stuff to do. And therefore, there were a lot of places where time potentially can be saved. These were all on the table for the joint team to work on. However, it's nice to start a process like that, but it's also nice to have some quick wins. And quick wins tend to increase buy-in and enthusiasm from both partners. They're also nice to use as examples for your boss and for internal clients, whether you're on the client or agency side. So look for them. They're an important part of the overall process and making it a win. Let's talk about a couple of our quick wins in detail, and I'll show you a couple of examples of changes that we made. One of the big wins for us in terms of time and effort for both sides was in reducing the complexity of the RFP and proposal process. So over a period of 3 years, we eventually got the RFP and process down to this: a phone call or a few lines in an email for the request and a 5-item email proposal that you see on the screen in front of you. So there are 5 things there. You see the approach, deliverables, AT&T is responsible for, the timing, and the cost. However, there's only 5 lines showing there, but the underlying support to get to the 5 lines, that's another story. That took a lot of effort and iterations to get to where we are now, which is this very simple process. So the thing you're working on when you're doing it is creating clarity and simplicity and speed in communications. So one of the things that, we'll get to some of the underlying support stuff later, by the way, but one of the things that I want you to see on this slide is the time, 10:52 a.m. when we sent the proposal to AT&T. We had an approval 18 minutes later at 11:10. Part of what occurred here was that AT&T streamlined their approval process and committed to looking at the proposal email immediately. So the approval process was reduced in timeline, and the approval itself was one word: approved. Another thing that happened here was just by chance. One of our clients at AT&T was sitting in a meeting with internal clients, and it became clear they were going to need to test some new messages immediately. She sent us a quick text message saying that it was coming. This allowed us to identify the team we would use, start the project setup process immediately. Now that sort of heads up has become a normal part of the process. So we got lucky on that one. Of course, sometimes it's a false alarm and there is not going to be a test, but mostly it does happen. And then we turned around and started giving our fieldwork partners a similar heads up. This is also a learning process for them because they had to revamp some of their processes to streamline them and how they reacted to our fast turn requests. But again, it's part of the streamlining the whole process from start to final delivery of the report. So those were a couple of things that we did at the front end, I guess you could talk about, say. So we were talking about setup streamlining. So then after that, those sort of easy changes, they took trial and error, but they're sort of easy. But then we moved on to the more deliberate efforts to take time out of the system. These efforts focused on standardizing the processes, creating templates wherever we could think of them, and asking the question, do we really need that? And it wasn't just us on our side, it was definitely AT&T on their side, because they really did a big job of reducing what they wanted and what they actually used internally. So there's 3 areas where we focused on first for taking time out of the process. First of all, we started using the AT&T internal templates for all reporting. This doesn't save Skim any time, but it saves the AT&T a lot of time. They can quickly create sub-reports or one-slide summaries without any reformatting. That was a big deal for them. That was a big help for them. Second, presets. So many questionnaire sections and question types are predefined and agreed upon at this point. We know what kind of questions we want to ask, AT&T knows what kind of information they want. We're very clear on this. The results are a clear understanding of about what is done and what is to be delivered. No surprises. And then we've come up with a standard report template and format so that internal decision makers know what to expect and they know where to look for recommendations. First page, that's where they are every time. So we've got processes, templates, defined deliverables, defined sample, along with questionnaire and analysis modules that have been tested and tweaked. The predefined processes and templates reduced QC time because all of the module templates have been QC'd in advance. That was a big help to us. An unexpected benefit is the elimination of soft launches because the questionnaire programming has already been QC'd at the module level and in combination with other links. No soft launch can make a really big difference in time. It can mean launching today instead of tomorrow. Frequently, we get projects on a Friday, and no soft launch means the difference between launching on Friday night or missing the window and missing a weekend of fielding. That means the difference between data coming out of the field on Monday morning and delivering results by end of day Monday versus just going into the field on Monday. So that was an unplanned but great benefit of standardization. Reduction. So we did a lot of things to try to reduce the time we need and reduce the effort involved for everybody. And basically 3 areas worked out. Reduce report size, reduced analysis time, and the result was an increase in demand. So reports and the reports for message tests and concept tests and print ads are all templated, as I mentioned, and they're generally about 10 slides with a consistent structure and flow so that everybody knows what to expect and when. And they get familiar with them. It reduces the time and attention needed by decision makers to digest and act on information, and it may make the difference between research being used or not used. Of course, there's always an appendix with some additional information, but nonetheless, it's also very templated and standardized. We were able to do this because our clients ask their internal clients what they don't need or what they don't even read, and then removing that stuff from the report to reflect the real-world usage of reports. We've all seen reports that have gone to clients and they use 10% or 30% or whatever, some percentage of what we sent them, and they don't use the rest. So this was a clear effort by both us and AT&T to take that stuff out. It also allowed us to build project type analytic tools that are specific to the project. So again, you reduce the time needed to create reports and insights. An unexpected benefit of shorter timelines and increased actionability is that end clients started asking for more research because they could get it in the time frame they needed it and because it was easy to access and use. Next, so you can see we're going through this whole process of things and nothing happened all at once. These were iterations and things got better and things got better, and they're still getting better. But the next thing we did is we looked at how we could modularize parts of the process and of the research process and systemize things. So we started to focus on what kinds of questions were used most often and how we could create pre-programmed modules to address the questions and to use as a shorthand when we discuss the actual business questions and needs. So we could be in a meeting with a client at AT&T once we had developed these modules, and they could say, we need the Resonate module, we need the brand module, we need the 360 impact module. And we would know what they meant, and they would know that we knew. And so it was very helpful all the way along. So it also allowed us to easily mix and match together question types to handle more complex questions. So it had multiple benefits along the way. And the use of module names, as I mentioned, really allowed us to create a simple language for discussing project types. That's been very helpful. Similar to the 5-line summary of the email proposal, though, there's a lot of underlying standard information encompassed in each module. The name is a summary about what is to be done. And as with the use of templates, modules reduce the need for QC and, again, for soft launches. Systemized. All right, so not everything's going to be done in 22 hours. AT&T doesn't always have very short timelines. Some studies are planned long in advance with a lot of upfront consultation. On the more complex and strategic studies, like the ensemble segmentation of the U.S. mobility and pay TV consumer market that we did for them last year, and also for the consumer decision journey studies that we've done for them, and for our meta-analyses, they take a lot longer. So I don't want you to think that everything is in 22 to 48 hours. That's not true. However, that is one type of project that we do on an ongoing basis for AT&T. And that has driven a lot of the need for fast and clean questionnaire design and processes, and that has flowed over to the other projects, other lengths of projects as well. So those ones, those 22-hour, they're tactical, immediate, single question, which name is best? Usually a max-diff exercise with simple conjoint. And then longer projects, 2 to 10 days, they're still tactical, but they have more complex message or concept tests. You know, maybe 1 or 2 modules or of a max-diff, and maybe some of the other tools that we talked about in the module section. And then like the 4-week-long one, we do a lot of meta-analyses for AT&T, so we look at all of their forms of research and information coming in from whatever agency and put them together into studies. That takes a lot longer, 4 weeks. And then 6 to 10 weeks, as I mentioned, the segmentation kinds of studies and consumer decision journey, those things. So we have 4 different sets of timelines, and each timeline is defined, and what's in there is defined. So you can see that we've been really looking at the process and how we make this better and how we take stuff out wherever we can. So we've got really 6 things that I want to just kind of summarize with here. The first one, no trust, no speed. The importance of mutual trust in making the process and relationship seamless cannot be overstated. We know it's not going to work every time because we're trying new stuff. And they know it's not going to work every time when they're asking us for things that we haven't done before. So, but we all know that we're in this together, and we're going to make it work. Second, the deconstruct and the question and remove. That idea of what can you remove from the process and what can you remove from the final report because nobody's looking at it anyway. Those kinds of things were really, really helpful in reducing the amount of time and effort that it took to get things done. Templates. We are just using the heck out of templates. We just use them all the time. We're always asking, can this process or step be templated? Because if it can, it means no QC in the future. The internal demand for research goes up. We did find that. There's no question that the internal demand for research goes up when you make it easy for them to use it. And that was a big benefit that we found. So if you reduce the gap between when they ask for something and when you deliver something, then they can ask for stuff more often, and they do. And then the predefined creates clear communications. We have rate cards and standard modules, and they create really clear understanding about expectations and deliverable. That's been very helpful for us. Finally, reducing the amount of the amount of deliverables really did increase the value and impact of the insights, because it means that the internal clients get to the essential insight that they need really quickly. So they get the so what right away, and they don't have to digest a lot of extra stuff. Somebody else's job to digest it, usually ours, but their job is to act on it and to do what they need to do in terms of strategy. So those are kind of six key takeaways that we think are really important for these kinds of processes. But just as a final observation, one of the primary precursors of this whole thing is that mutual trust that I mentioned as the first key takeaway. And that trust has been built up over the past 3 years. And AT&T has been willing to ask for what seems like impossible because they know that we are open to thinking in new ways and open to challenges. And we've been comfortable because we know that we can push back and say, yeah, I don't think so. That's not going to work. But they know that we don't do that very often. So that's the end of the webinar. Thank you very much.